Good morning. Good morning, Unity of Charlotte. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Reverend Jim Ernston. I am co-minister here along with Reverend Lisa Herklotz, and we welcome you. If you're here in the sanctuary, if you're here in the chapel, if you're at home on Zoom, we welcome you as well. Or if you're watching this later on as you look at our YouTube feed, welcome to this service on this February morning. So, let's go ahead and read our mission statement. So please, together with me, Unity of Charlotte is the place where we nurture a deep and mature experience of God through the practice of unity principles. Simply put, we are here to love, grow, and serve. Thank you so much. If you're here for the first time, we would love just to say a quick hello. If you are here, just gently raise your hand so that we know that you're new. We've got a new person right here and a new person over here. Welcome to our service. And hopefully that wasn't too embarrassing. So thank you for being here. We invite you as well to, let me mention that we do have visitor packets. If you don't already have one of our ushers will get you that has information on unity in general and Unity of Charlotte specifically. So make sure you get one of those and join us later on for fellowship in Cafe Unity as well. So we're so glad you decided to spend your morning with us. We invite you to take a look at all the things that we have in order to keep track of what's going on. We have a website, we have a newsletter, we have Facebook, we have that YouTube feed, and we have our bulletin board. The bulletin board is out here in the hallway that has all the details, all the QR codes, all the bells and whistles out there. So make sure you take a look at the bulletin board out there. So I invite you to gently close your eyes if that feels comfortable. Breathe into this space as we join together. We take this moment and we move within. We visualize that moving from our head space down into that heart space, where we leave behind that thinking and move into feeling and knowing. We gently shift. We notice in our heart space, we allow that to expand. We use this as a moment of deep awareness as I open myself up to the reality that I go beyond my humanity. I am one with the divine. I invite my head and my heart to recognize that I am divine. I have never been separated from that power, that creative power that I simply call divine spirit. We rise into this realization with every aspect of our being, physical, mental, emotional. We are one. And with that we say, amen. At this time, I invite you to speak out loud. If you know of anyone who is in need of prayer, now is the time where we do that. We say those names out loud, those situations out loud. We bring that into our consciousness here so that as a congregation, we as a community, we hold these people. So please speak their names out loud now. And we hold these names, we hold these situations in our heart, in prayer, seeing divine order. And with that we say, amen. Please join me in our unity prayer of oneness. So out loud, there is one presence and one power in my life and universe, God the good, omnipotence. Know that our prayer team is waiting to work with you if you have any need for prayer. We have an online, a virtual prayer box that you can fill out on our website. You can get to it through our newsletter as well. We have a physical prayer box that you fill out and you can join that prayer that prayer list, and our prayer team will happen. And you can also reach out to Silent Unity. If you need that phone number, see me afterwards. I can give you that phone number, and you can call them night or day as well. So glad to see so many folks, and know that we adjusted our chairs this morning. We've moved some stuff in, and we always have room in the front row.
Good morning, Unity of Charlotte.
Good morning.
Daily Word, Sunday, February 2nd. I look ahead with positive expectations. So many things pull at my attention. The things that I must attend to, meeting the needs of others, and even my own pursuits and passions require my time and attention. Setting and working towards my goals may sound like a dull undertaking, but it's actually an empowering path to spiritual freedom. Working towards goals, toward a goal helps me focus and keeps me motivated. I call upon and claim my spiritual gifts of imagination and order to set my goal, plan, and to achieve it. I use my gift of wisdom to discern the best path and my will to make my best choices. This is the way I use the power of God to give my life meaning and make my dreams come true. I look ahead, grateful for God's presence within me. Let your eyes look forward. Let your gaze be straight before you. Keep straight the path of your feet, and all your ways will be sure. Proverbs 4:25 and 26.
Welcome February. It's February. Woo! February is a special month, and not just because it's when my birthday is. February is Black History Month. It's when we celebrate Black history. And so for our continuing theme this month, it's going to be inclusivity. Our annual theme for Unity of Charlotte this year is growing with. And then each month we're going to have a particular theme that that supports that idea of how we're growing. Growing is one of our Unity of Charlotte, is part of our mission statement. We're here to love, grow, and serve. So growing through inclusivity is what we're going to be looking at. And, normally when we talk about inclusivity, we generally talk about it as out here, how we include, especially those populations that have been marginalized. And we will be looking at that as we go through the month, especially as we're celebrating Black History Month. The purpose of Black History Month is to create a greater sense of inclusion for that population that has been marginalized in our past. But inclusivity is a deep spiritual concept that I want to look at today because it begins within each one of us. And it starts with a spiritual understanding of who and what we are and who and what God is. So, here we go. We've been reading in the book by Eric Butterworth called In the Flow of Life. This is the Wednesday night Zoom co-ministers book club. Thank you. And we've been having a lot of fun, haven't we? Those of you who've been attending. This is an awesome book. So I'm going to start with the chapter we're about to go into this week called The Art of Getting Along. That's exactly what I did, Margaret. I chuckled. The Art of Getting Along. And I thought, very topical. I think I'll dive into this. So let me read just a little bit of what he says. Life is set in the framework of human relations. Okay, boom, right off the bat, life. The divine flow of life is set in our relationships with each other. It'll never be just me. The divine flow of life happens through our relations. Getting along with people is certainly a prerequisite to happiness and security because all humankind is interdependent. Another little ding, ding, ding. We are all interdependent. But even more, he says, it is a longing of the heart that arises out of the transcendent awareness of unity. So interdependent is kind of an expression of who we are in our worldly experience with each other. We are all interdependent on each other. But from a deeper, more transcendent spiritual aspect, it's oneness. It's that there is no separation, that we are in a unified expression of being. So these two ideas we're going to be diving into a little bit today. But before I move on, he says Lao Tzu said that one lives in proportion to the number of points that with which he or she contacts life and the world. The number of points we have in contact with the world, meaning we're not living in a cave. We come out, we connect with other people, with situations, with opportunities. And this is inferring that the flow of life must go outward to form a harmonious interaction with people. And one who frustrates this flow by harboring thoughts of resistance, prejudice, or animosity only half lives. Only half lives. So, we're going to be looking at the idea of inclusivity today through three lenses, or actually three aspects is probably a better way to put it. One is through the golden rule, the first unity principle, which we speak as our prayer of oneness every Sunday, and what the Buddhists call the middle way. But as I've studied the middle way, I've realized it really is what we call living in the flow of life. So let's explore these aspects. And I'd like to begin by starting with a personal story of how I experienced the shift I needed to make in order to become more inclusive. Many years ago, I started to study A Course in Miracles. This was an extremely powerful and transformative study that changed my life. But at that time, I had a family member who had a very traditional religious upbringing. And at that time, many of the traditional churches were very fearful of A Course in Miracles. And so she started to write me letters using words like devil, temptation, evil, sin, damnation, hell. Okay. Trigger words for me, I can tell you, which was the whole reason I was doing A Course in Miracles. But here I was so excited about the expansion of my understanding of God and who I was in that relationship that I kept trying to explain to her. I said, if she just knew, she would see it the way I do. And I was also a little irritated because this was a big thing for me, and she was like being pretty critical and using some pretty powerful words. So I was a little, there was a little trigger in there, and so I would write back letters describing what was correct. So how do you think that went? Yeah. I'm guessing by that laugh, most of you have had an experience similar to that. Sometimes it's with family members, sometimes it's with friends, sometimes it's with someone within your own church community. Well, we really still live in a very volatile time where it's getting harder and harder to have conversations, especially about deep topics. And this is an issue because this frustrates the flow of life. This frustrates our ability to be inclusive. But we have to begin right here. So let's take a look. The first thing I want to talk about is that at the root of this divisiveness is fear. And I think this is a really important thing to recognize. In Unity and in A Course in Miracles, both, I've seen this statement made that there are only two emotions, love, and we often think that hate is the opposite, but it's not. It's fear. Love and fear. Because hate stems out of fear. It's not a root emotion. Fear is at the root. Love and fear. And what that means is that there's two states of consciousness we can live by or experience life through. And one is based on love and one is based on fear. Sometimes we call that our ego and the other our spiritual nature. Now, consciousness, when we talk about consciousness, well, let me step back a minute. That the one state of consciousness that is love knows itself and experiences itself through connection and stability. The consciousness of fear knows and expresses itself through separation and division. So, consciousness is everything. Consciousness precedes the manifestation of form of the physical world. If there was no physical world, consciousness still exists. And the whole of consciousness is what we call God. God is that source consciousness from which everything springs forward. And out of consciousness is manifested the physical world. And this is important to know. This is our Unity First principle, that God is the single source and power of all that is. There is no opposing force or power. And from that, we are made in the image of. And often we hear this likened to a wave on an ocean. If the ocean is all there is, God, and there's a wave that forms, that wave is expressing the ocean in a unique and individuated way, but it's made up of, its essence is what? The ocean. It's still the ocean. And so we are individuated expressions of this grand, whole, loving state of consciousness. But what beliefs do we use to drive our creative ability? Are we coming from fear or are we coming from love? Now, fear, I'm just going to touch on fear for a moment because science tells us, and this is from Psychology Today, and you've probably heard me say this because I was so struck by this. I use it often. Fear is a powerful driver of our decisions and our actions, but it is not automatic. Even our instinctual fear, like learning to run from a snake or a bear, that's an instinctual fear. It's still learned. But it's a survival technique. It's a necessary fear, but it's only designed to help us get out of that scenario, not to live from. Most of the fear that we live from is created from the experiences we have in growing up as a child that we've taken on and not released, and through what we learn through our cultural norms. So if you grow up in the South and you keep hearing how those Northerners are crazy and they talk too fast and they do everything too fast, and we have so many cultural norms we're not even aware of because we grew up in them. So those all are unconscious beliefs now that generate fear. And now if we continue to live from that consciousness, we cannot know the love that we are and the inclusivity that is already present. Now, divisiveness is a tool of fear. Because when we're in fear, we're going to seek a resolution. And within that state of fear, divisiveness is one way to do that. Because what do? We can project the fear as not being in us, but being out there, being somebody else or some other situation that is wrong. So we judge it, we determine what it is, we decide it's bad, and we move away from it. But now we live our life constantly having to protect ourselves from all these things that we think we need to do to resolve our state of fear. And it's exhausting. It's no wonder we get old and tired. If this is how we live our life. So what is the true resolution? And how do we remember and grow our spiritual capacity for inclusivity? And now I'm going to talk about the golden rule. What is the golden rule? Just shout out how you would say. That was great. You all got it. I couldn't understand it, but I know it's there. We say it in a number of different ways. So let's go to the first slide in the first scripture reading. This was very foundational to what Jesus taught us. And the reason it's so important, and I keep coming back to it, is because it's a spiritual law. It's a spiritual principle. So in Matthew 7:12, it says, "So in everything, do to others what you want them to do to you." That's the meaning of the law of Moses and the teaching of the prophets. In another version, it says that sums up the law and the prophets. That sums up. That means of all these laws, this is what it sums up to. Now, another scripture, let's go to the next. Yeah, thank you. This is from Luke 6:37-38. And this is, okay, hold on. Let me back up a minute because there's something else I want to cover before I get to that one. You can keep that up, Yvonne, thank you. Another one in Luke says, "Love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do to others what you would have them do to you." Now, the thing that really stands out for me in the Golden Rule, which, by the way, there's a form of the Golden Rule in every major faith tradition. That's how universal this is. But what is it, or who is it the Golden Rule is pointing to? In every instance, the Golden Rule is saying, you do this, you be this, not anything about them out there. So it brings, now, that brings a responsibility back here, but it also brings me back to my own power. I am now empowered to change how I experience this. So now I want to read Luke 6:37-38. "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back." Now, I know for some of you, you've heard this one probably many times. For some, it might be the first time you've heard it. But this is a very fundamental, universal, spiritual law that we teach and practice in unity. This is what Jesus came to show us as the way to reclaim the goodness of the spiritual nature that we inherited from our Creator. So now going to a metaphysical explanation of this particular verse, I'm going to turn to Reverend Ed Townley, who was a very well-known teacher of unity principles in the earlier years. And he says this about the scripture we just read. It suggests that judgment and condemnation do not come from God in the first place. Ooh. That's different. Judgment does not come from God in the first place. He goes on to say, they are human consequences of human choices. They are human consequences. In other words, as I give, I'm going to receive that back because that's what I'm putting out there. That's what I'm creating with the power of God within me to experience in my outer world. He goes on to say that what causes us to feel judged or condemned, the only thing that causes us to feel judged or condemned is our own tendency to judge and condemn others. This is really important because it all comes back to this. And we're standing in a time when I think it's so important to remember. Because it doesn't mean we're not going to look out there and see people doing some crazy things, some negative things, some things that are harmful and will impact many people. And it doesn't mean that we just stand by. But it has to begin here first. Because if I'm in a state of fear and condemnation and judgment, how can I change it out there when that's what I'm bringing? So going back to my story with my family member who is sending me these letters regarding my teaching, I had to really sit with it because the harder I tried to defend myself, the stronger her letters got. And they were pretty strong to begin with. And it's interesting, but because what I did start to see is that she wasn't angry. She was afraid. She was fearful for the path I was walking because in her perception, it was leading me astray and I would be harmed. So my perception started to shift in that I could see a little bit of where she was coming from. She's afraid for me and she loves me and she doesn't want to see me get lost. So we'll come back again to that. Let's go to the next slide. This is also from Reverend Ed Townley. And I think it is a summation really of what I want to say today. If we stop judging and condemning, we will immediately stop the rebound effect that brings back onto us the same energies we directed out towards them. I'm living with this, especially when we sit in the Spiritual Social Action Ministry group, because we're there to bring change. And we're needed. We're all needed. But we are building a spiritual foundation of understanding and recognizing with compassion, which, by the way, is what Martin Luther King did. Martin Luther King Jr. in that civil rights movement and all those others who came before him and taught him, including all the way back to Gandhi. They didn't just start marching. They went through very intense training to learn how to do this. To learn to be that peaceful presence, to not condemn those who were standing in front of them and condemning them. Because they understood that if I bring that back, it's just going to those energies will rebound back onto me. And then we just have a big mess. Speaking of a mess, I'm going to try this. This is a little demonstration. Anybody use earbuds like this? So I keep these by my bed at night because I will sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep. And I'll put my earbuds on, plug in my phone, and put on a meditation or something that will help quiet my mind. So as Yvonne discovered, Reverend Jim, he's a very neat, he raps in chord. It's very neat and chordy. This is me, okay? So the middle of the night, I reach over, I grab my earbuds, and I'm like, and I'm going, okay, in the middle of the night, in the dark, I don't want to be dealing with this. I just want my meditation. And the more and more I pull and pull and tug, what happens to this tangle? It just gets worse until I go, this isn't working. What else can I do? Because the more fearful energy, because I'm in a state of fear in that moment because I'm afraid I'm not going to get enough sleep and I'm not going to be good the next morning. And I'm fearful for the things running through my mind, which is why I'm trying to get into a meditation in the first place. I have to pause and stop and choose a different approach. And that's what we're going to look at with the middle way. Because if I relax and I take a moment and patiently really look at the tangle, I can kind of see what things are really being presented here. And I can take the time to gently and easily allow it to unravel. And voila. So what is all that about? We're going to talk about the middle way. And the middle way is a Buddhist teaching, but it is also a universal understanding and principle because it says it's moving. They call it the path between right and wrong. But what that really means to me is it's the path where there is no right and wrong. Right and wrong is a way of thinking. It's a belief system of duality. The middle way says, if we let go of the idea of right and wrong, we find a flow. Eric Butterworth calls it the flow of life. We do this when we learn how more to pause and to turn within and recognize our greater self, our higher self, our spiritual self, whatever words you use to recognize who you are in God. And the more we do that by releasing our judgments about what's happening, the more we widen our circle of compassion. And that's an inclusive movement. We are opening up to be more inclusive. Because if you really think about it, nobody is ever totally wrong. Nobody's ever totally right. So if that's true, how much can I stand in this space of not right or wrong to discover something I hadn't seen before? And this requires patience. It requires a vigilance and an intention to choose to be patient when we get triggered. And it's a practice. And I've been doing this a while and it's still a practice. But I get better at it and better at it. And that offers me more and more of the experience of compassion and openness and love. Because that's what I want to bring into the world. But I have to start with my own triggers. There's a poet and writer named Mark Nepo, and he wrote this. The middle way requires patience because fear wants us to act too soon, right? Fear is me trying to like tighten up and just like, I just want that not to unravel. I just act out instead of pausing. And he says, but patience, hard as it is, helps us outlast our preconceptions. Now, I like that idea because it says if I choose patience and open up to this space, this flow, this middle ground, it allows the preconceptions I've brought in to fade away. And when those fade, I get to see more of what's really being presented. He goes on to say, given enough time, most of our enemies cease to be enemies because waiting allows us to see ourselves in them. Patience devastates us with the truth that, in essence, when we fear another, we fear ourselves. When we fear another, it means it's an immediate recognition that we're coming from a fearful state of consciousness. So our first job then is to pause, reflect, be aware, and choose to shift. And it may not happen immediately. Sometimes when I'm trying to unravel those earbuds, it takes me a moment to want to go, I have to wait. I have to pause. But that's the answer. That's our answer. Patience is a spiritual practice. Patience is what we mean when we say, let go and let God. Patience is what we're calling for when we say, let's move in the flow of life. Because patience is how we open and can move forward in alignment with the spiritual principles of our own divine nature. And it always helps me to remember that love is not dependent on agreeing. We're not talking about coming to an agreement. We're not all going to agree ever. That's what diversity is. We'll have a talk later on that one. It doesn't have to be about agreement. It's about seeing beyond the projections of that person and knowing who they are at their core because you are recognizing who you are at yours. And recognizing that if you're fearing someone, then there is a fear in here that is ready to be released and let go of, so that we can embrace even that person that triggers us the most, because our trigger will be gone. And when that happens, we're no longer putting the energy out there to rebound, and they will feel that. And it will impact them, but not because you're telling them they're right or wrong or trying to explain anything. It's energy. And this is how we change the world. Because now the energy we're putting out there reflects love. And there is no power greater than that. There's no power greater than that. That is God living through us. So how did my story end with my family member? Well, out of sheer frustration, which is kind of funny because, the whole point of me doing the course is to use that as my tool. I went, let's go open the course book. So I did. And the lesson I opened to is, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. And I went, oh yeah, feeling pretty defensive around her. And I read through it, I put it into practice. And here's the incredible and miraculous shift that happened for me. Is I saw that the things that she was presenting to me as her fears were still in my consciousness. because I grew up as in a traditional Christian background, and I learned about the devil and and this power and temptation. I learned all these things from the time I was a child, and they were still in my unconscious belief system. And now I was learning a brand new perspective that required I let these old ways go to understand from a greater understanding. And when I saw that I had that fear, I got to stand in that in prayer and say, what is the truth? And finally let those go. And I was freed from those forever. And I also had no need to defend myself with her anymore. And what I did see, I looked at her and I said, you know what? She loves God as much as I do. And she is as dedicated and committed to her spiritual growth as I am. But her path looks really different than mine. And that's okay. Now, it's not that she changed. Well, she did, because I stopped trying to defend myself. And you know what? I just started telling her how much I loved her and how much I appreciated her commitment to her spiritual growth. I let her know that I saw her and her dedication and love of God, and that I shared that with her. And we've mostly never had a problem after that. But it did completely change the dynamic. And I have a healthy and love-filled relationship with my family members. So if I can do it there, I can do it with everything I see in the news that is ramping up my triggers again. This is my practice. I used that story as a benchmark because I saw how it worked in me and how it shifted. And ironically, she did shift. She started to soften and open up. We still don't align completely on our religious beliefs, but it doesn't matter as much. So what I offer to you is a call to action. When you feel that that things are starting to get all knotted up in some kind of conversation or some relationship or a situation, I mean, for me, I can just turn the news on. I turn the news on and I start getting knotted up. And I'm like, okay, what energy do I want to be bringing to this world? How am I really going to be the most effective in and I love John Stringer's talk, was so beautiful. If you're here for it, he talked about the new human, the new world. How can I play my part to bring that about? And the first thing is to pause and be patient and be willing to relook at what's happening from a broader perspective, the middle way, one that's not judging it as right and wrong, but simply standing and going, what is this? And how can I bring love to it? Can you do that this week as a practice? I challenge you, for those who like to be challenged. If you don't like to be challenged, I invite you. Whichever one works for you. I want to inspire you, because we are being called, all of us, each and every one, to be the light in this world. And this is a part of what's needed. I have an affirmation I created. It's simply this. I don't have a slide for it. In this moment, I release judgments and remember my unity with all life. In this moment, I release all judgments and remember my unity with all life. Do you want to say that with me? In this moment, I release judgments and remember my unity with all life. Let's take that now into a very brief meditation. Gently close your eyes. If you're comfortable, if not, let your gaze just lower and soften. Take a moment to turn within and let whatever words you heard, whatever really sparked something for you in this message, Give that space to be without really thinking about it. Let that space open up from your head to your heart. We include our head and our heart in this meditation. There's a space that encompasses both because that is all of us. That's inclusivity, including all parts of ourselves. And as we open this space, we see it is filled with the light of divine presence. This is who we are. When Jesus called us the light of the world, he meant it. There is a light within us. It lives and moves and breathes and expresses as us. Darkness is but a shadow when we block this light, but it is never not there. Take a moment to feel the spaciousness within you of this light. And if it helps, we will remember our affirmation that is simply in this moment. If anything comes up, I release judgments. And I remember my unity with all of life. Breathe into that space. And as we prepare to come back, hold in your mind with faith and conviction. The light and love of this spaciousness is always present. And have the intention to carry it forward with you into every interaction, every situation. Committing ourselves to living inclusivity in all we do, within and without. On the next gentle breath, bring your attention up behind your eyes. Gently blink them open and become present. Namaste.
Well, now is the time that we move into the offering part of our service. We know that as we give, so do we receive. And it's through your generous giving that Unity of Charlotte continues to be a light in this community. Consistent giving happens in many different ways. It can be the donate button on the website. It can be your phone, and you can use that text to give, and there's that phone number. It can be your own bill pay system at your bank. It can be the QR codes that you see behind me as well. And those QR codes are all up and down the hallway for you to use after service as well. Or you can give here today as well. So let's go ahead and imagine that we are holding our gift in our hands. It can be a physical gift. It can be the image of giving online as well. Say with me out loud, joyously I give this gift, knowing the divine presence blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God. Ushers. And there are QR codes in the plate if you want to pick one of those out. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. We are light, love, power, and presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.